Hi everyone. Athenian democracy was an experiment in direct democracy that emerged in ancient Athens. This political system is considered to be one of the most significant political experiments in human history. The Athenian democracy that we will study emerged in the 5th century BC, but its roots can be traced back to the 8th century BC. In this video, we'll examine the origins of Athenian democracy, exploring the breakdowns of the aristocracy, the reforms of Solon and Cleisthenes, and the nature of Athenian democracy prior to the Persian invasion in 490 BC. So the questions to make notes on are, number 1, how was Athens ruled in the 8th century BC and what problems was it facing? 2, what changes did Solon make and what effect did they have? 3, what changes did Cleisthenes make and what effect did they have? And number 4, what was the early democracy of Athens like prior to the first Persian invasion? So firstly, part 1. In the 8th century BC, Athens was ruled by a small group of aristocrats who held all the power and wealth. This system of government was known as an oligarchy, or rule of the few. However, the aristocracy was in crisis, and the people of Athens were demanding a greater say in how their city was governed. The aristocracy was facing several challenges, including economic issues, social unrest, and external threats. So firstly, economic issues were a significant factor in the breakdown of the aristocracy. Athens was experiencing a period of rapid growth and expansion, which led to an increase in population and the development of a mercantile or kind of merchant class. However, the aristocrats refused to share their wealth and power with the growing number of people who were not born into aristocratic families. This led to widespread social unrest and political instability from these dissatisfied citizens in the lower classes. External threats were another factor in the breakdown of the aristocracy. The Persians were expanding their empire and threatening the independence of the Greek city-states. This led to an emerging new sense of nationalism among the people of Athens, who began to demand a greater say in how their city was governed. So in the early 6th century BC, Solon was appointed as archon and created a new constitution for Athens. He introduced a number of important reforms that helped to create a more equitable society and laid the foundation for Athenian democracy. One of Solon's most significant reforms was the cancellation of debts. Many Athenians were heavily indebted to the aristocrats, and this debt was used as a means of control. Solon cancelled all debts and freed those who had been enslaved due to the money that they owed. This gave many Athenians a fresh start and helped to reduce the power of the aristocracy. Solon also reorganized Athenian politics and society by creating 4 new classes according to wealth. Privileges were now given to the wealthy rather than just those of noble birth. The wealthiest Athenians were given key leadership roles in the government and military, but now even the poorest could contribute by attending the assembly, as well as serving as jurors in the law courts and as light infantry or sailors in the army and navy. In the late 6th century BC, Cleisthenes introduced a new set of reforms that further developed Athenian democracy. He created 10 tribes based on geography rather than family tribes, which broke down the power of the aristocracy and ensured that political power was distributed more equally among the citizens. Depending on which source you believe, but we'll go with Cleisthenes in this one, Cleisthenes created the boule, or the council. Some sources think that Solon created a council of 400. So Cleisthenes' council was a group of 500 men with 50 representatives chosen from each tribe by lot to serve each year. Its role was to ensure that the city and its politics ran smoothly, with the people ultimately making decisions on policy via the assembly. Cleisthenes' reforms also introduced the concept of ostracism, which allowed citizens to vote to banish any person deemed a threat to democracy for a period of 10 years. This was a powerful tool to prevent any individual from becoming too powerful, and it also allowed for the peaceful transfer of power. So prior to the Persian invasion in 490 BC, Athenian democracy was still in its early stages, but it had already undergone significant changes from when it first started developing. The assembly of the people, first of all, became more powerful and began to play a greater role in the governance of the city-state. The boule, or council of 500 citizens, was responsible for preparing laws and advising the assembly. Its composition, with representation from all 10 tribes and random selection, allowed for greater citizen participation and representation in the government. Athenian democracy, in contrast to our democracy today, also had a direct democratic system in which all citizens were eligible to participate in the assembly and vote on important issues such as war and peace, laws, and policies. This allowed for a wide range of opinions and perspectives to be considered in decision-making and ensured that the government was more responsive to the needs and the desires of all citizens. However, it is important to note that Athenian democracy was not perfect, and not all people were included in this system. Only freeborn men who were over 18 years old and born to Athenian parents were considered citizens and eligible to participate in the government. And women, slaves, and foreigners were all excluded from the political process and therefore power. So as we finish up, double check your notes and make sure you can answer the following. Number 1, how was Athens ruled in the 8th century BC and what problems was it facing? Number 2, what changes did Solon make and what effect did they have? Number 3, what changes did Cleisthenes make and what effect did they have? And number 4, what was the early democracy of Athens like prior to the first Persian invasion? Thanks, and I'll see you in class.